Every year, on the second Monday of October, the United States observes Columbus Day. This federal holiday commemorates the arrival of Christopher Columbus in the Americas on October 12, 1492. For many, it is a day to celebrate Italian-American heritage and the spirit of exploration. However, Columbus Day is also a day marked by controversy. The holiday has faced increasing scrutiny in recent decades as more and more people have come to recognize the devastating impact of Columbus's voyages on the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Columbus Day, therefore, stands as a symbol of both celebration and contention. It is a day that prompts us to reflect upon a pivotal moment in history, a moment that irrevocably intertwined the fates of two continents. It is a day to acknowledge the spirit of exploration that drove Columbus and countless others to seek new horizons. Yet, it is also a day to confront the complex and often troubling legacy of colonialism that followed in the wake of Columbus's voyages. As we commemorate Columbus Day, it is essential to engage with the full spectrum of its history, acknowledging both the triumphs and the tragedies that have shaped its meaning. By confronting the complexities of the past, we can foster a more nuanced and informed understanding of the present. Christopher Columbus, born in Genoa, Italy in 1451, was a man driven by ambition and a thirst for adventure. He possessed a deep fascination with the sea and a burning desire to find a westward route to the East Indies, the source of valuable spices and riches. At the time, European access to these eastern treasures was controlled by Arab traders and Venetian merchants, making the journey both costly and perilous. Columbus believed that by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean, he could reach the East Indies more quickly and establish a more direct trade route. He underestimated the size of the Earth, believing it to be much smaller than it actually is. Despite facing skepticism and rejection from various European courts, Columbus eventually secured the patronage of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. In August of 1492, Columbus set sail from the port of Palos de la Frontera in Spain, commanding a fleet of 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. His journey across the Atlantic was long and arduous, marked by storms, dwindling supplies, and growing discontent among his crew. After more than 2 months at sea, land was finally sighted on October 12th, 1492, forever altering the course of history. Columbus's arrival in the Americas was a momentous occasion, marking the beginning of a new era of global exploration and interaction. However, his initial encounters with the indigenous peoples of the Americas were marked by a profound misunderstanding of their cultures and a sense of European superiority. Columbus landed on an island in the Bahamas, which he named San Salvador. He believed he had reached the East Indies, calling the indigenous inhabitants Indians. Columbus described the native people he encountered in his journals, noting their physical appearance, customs, and beliefs. He remarked on their generosity and willingness to trade, but also viewed them as potential subjects for conversion to Christianity and exploitation for their labor and resources. Columbus's interactions with the indigenous populations set the stage for the complex and often tragic relationship between Europeans and Native Americans that would unfold over the following centuries. His arrival marked the beginning of a period of conquest, colonization, and cultural exchange that would profoundly shape the Americas and the world. Section 4. Columbus the Colonizer, establishing a foothold in the Caribbean. Columbus's voyages were not merely exploratory, they were also driven by a desire for conquest and the acquisition of wealth and power. Upon realizing that he had reached a new landmass, Columbus claimed the territories he encountered for the Spanish crown, believing it was his right to do so. He established settlements, built forts, and sought to extract resources from the land and its inhabitants. Columbus's second voyage in 1493 was much larger than his first, consisting of 17 ships and over 1,200 men. This expedition marked the beginning of Spanish colonization in the Americas. Columbus established the first permanent European settlement in the Americas on the island of Hispaniola, which he named La Isabela in honor of Queen Isabella. This settlement, however, was short-lived and plagued by disease, hunger, and conflict with the indigenous population. Columbus's efforts to establish a colonial presence in the Caribbean were met with resistance from the indigenous populations who fought back against European encroachment on their lands and way of life. The Spanish, armed with superior weaponry and driven by a sense of cultural and religious superiority, responded with brutality, enslaving indigenous people, forcing them into labor, and decimating their populations through disease and warfare. Section 5. A legacy of brutality. The dark side of Columbus's voyages. Columbus's voyages to the Americas had a devastating impact on the indigenous populations he encountered. His arrival ushered in a period of conquest, enslavement, and disease that decimated native populations and irrevocably altered the cultural landscape of the Americas. Columbus's men, driven by greed and a sense of superiority, enslaved indigenous people, forcing them to work in mines, on plantations, and as personal servants. The Spanish imposed a system of forced labor known as the encomienda system, which granted colonists the right to extract labor from indigenous people in exchange for their protection and instruction in Christianity. The arrival of Europeans also brought with it diseases to which the indigenous populations had no immunity, such as smallpox, measles, and influenza. These diseases spread rapidly, devastating entire communities and wiping out a significant portion of the indigenous population. The demographic collapse caused by disease weakened indigenous societies and made them more vulnerable to European domination. Section 6. The Columbian Exchange. A world transformed. Columbus's voyages initiated a period of unprecedented biological and cultural exchange between the Eastern and Western hemispheres, known as the Columbian Exchange. This exchange had a profound impact on the world, transforming diets, economies, and societies on both sides of the Atlantic. The Columbian Exchange introduced new crops to Europe, such as potatoes, tomatoes, corn, and chocolate, which had a significant impact on European agriculture and cuisine. These new food sources contributed to population growth in Europe and fueled the rise of new industries. Conversely, European livestock, such as horses, cattle, and pigs, were introduced to the Americas, transforming indigenous ways of life and altering the ecological balance of the continents. The Columbian Exchange, however, was not without its drawbacks. The introduction of new diseases to the Americas had devastating consequences for indigenous populations, while the transatlantic slave trade, which emerged in the wake of Columbus's voyages, brought untold suffering to millions of Africans. The Columbian Exchange stands as a testament to the interconnectedness of the world and the profound and lasting consequences of human actions.